Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The lights outside Riley's table flickered in the cool evening air, casting a warm glow over the empty streets. I stood at the entrance, my fingers tracing the edge of the glass door. This place, my restaurant, had been my sanctuary for years. Now, I was about to hand it over to Curtis while I went to Chicago for the project I'd been offered. The excitement of the opportunity couldn't completely shake off the heavy weight in my chest. Curtis, my oldest friend, sat inside at the bar, flipping through the latest financials. He looked up as I entered, his usual easy grin spreading across his face. "You're really doing it, huh? Heading off to the big leagues?" I tried to smile back, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. "Seems that way," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. "I'm trusting you with this, Curtis. Riley's table isn't just a business. It's a piece of me." Curtis leaned back, chuckling. "Relax, man. I've got this. You think I don't know how important this place is? I'll keep everything running smoothly while you're gone." I wanted to believe him. Curtis had been there from the start, back when I had no idea how to turn my culinary dreams into reality. He'd supported me through the tough times, been a confidant and partner. But still, the thought of leaving the restaurant, even for a 2-year contract, felt like leaving part of my heart behind. "You better," I said, trying to inject a little humor into my words. "This place is more than just a restaurant to me. It's my legacy." Curtis clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Bert, you need to let go and trust the process. You go crush it in Chicago, and I'll make sure this place is even better when you get back." I reached into my pocket, pulling out the keys. They felt heavier than usual as I handed them over. "I'll hold you to that," I said, my voice low, serious. Curtis took the keys with a nod, his expression matching mine. "You won't regret this. I'll run it just like you would." For a moment, we both stood in silence, the weight of the transition hanging in the air. Then Curtis broke the stillness. "I've made a few changes here and there already. Nothing major, just some staff shifts, adjustments to the menu." My head snapped up. "Changes? Already?" Curtis waved his hand dismissively. "Nothing to stress about, man. Just some fresh faces. I figured you'd want things running smoothly by the time you left, so I took initiative." A small pit formed in my stomach, but I brushed it off. "Keep me updated, okay? I don't want any surprises when I get back." Curtis smiled, more confident than I felt. "You'll be the first to know." As we walked out of the restaurant together, I took one last look at the sign above the door, Riley's table. My name, my blood, sweat, and dreams all embodied in those 2 words. I wasn't just leaving a restaurant. I was leaving behind everything I'd built. 2 years wasn't forever, but it was long enough for things to change. The cold wind rustled through the alley as I leaned against the brick wall, the shadows of the city wrapping around me like an old coat. My 2-year project in Chicago had turned into a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and late nights, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my gut. Something wasn't right back at Riley's table. The emails from Curtis had become shorter, less detailed, and the photos of the restaurant's events lacked the usual warmth. It felt off. That's when I decided to hire Theo. Theo was sharp, discreet, and had an ear to the ground. I met him in an old coffee shop, the kind that smelled of roasted beans and forgotten conversations. He sat across from me, his eyes scanning the room before they landed on me with laser-like focus. "You're sure about this?" he asked, sipping his espresso, his voice calm but serious. "You want me to spy on your best friend?" I hesitated for a moment, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. "I just need to know what's happening," I replied. "Curtis isn't telling me everything. I'm not looking to trap him. I just need the truth." Theo nodded, placing his cup down gently. "I understand. I'll keep a low profile, check out the staff, and report back. You'll know everything soon enough." I watched him leave the cafe, a sense of relief mixed with unease settling over me. I never imagined I'd have to investigate my own restaurant, let alone Curtis, but I couldn't let things spiral out of control. Riley's table was more than a business. It was my legacy. The air in Riley's table had changed. Theo sat in the far corner of the dining room, pretending to be absorbed in the menu while watching every move, every exchange. He had slipped in unnoticed, just as we planned. No one would suspect he wasn't another paying customer. His eyes swept over the restaurant, now filled with unfamiliar faces behind the counter and among the waitstaff. A waitress, slender with a tight bun atop her head, walked past Theo's table, barely acknowledging his presence. He caught her muttering something under her breath as she attended to a table of 2 elderly black women seated near the back. "Here's your order." "Try not to make a mess," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. The two women exchanged a glance but said nothing, clearly uncomfortable. Theo's stomach tightened. He had been here before, back when Riley's table felt like home, like a place where people of all backgrounds could gather with respect. Now that warmth had vanished, replaced by an eerie tension, one that made certain patrons, especially the black ones, feel like intruders in a space that once belonged to them. Theo jotted down a quick note on his phone before flagging down the same waitress, hiding his irritation behind a neutral expression. "Excuse me," he said, catching her attention. "Could I get a glass of water?" She glanced at him with mild disinterest, not even bothering to hide her annoyance. "Sure," she muttered before walking away. When she returned, slapping the glass of water on his table, Theo took a sip, noting the dirty rim of the glass. He gave her a polite smile, though his mind was racing. As she walked away, another waiter, a younger man, hovered near the kitchen doors, leaning against the frame and chatting with the bartender. His laughter echoed across the room, and Theo couldn't help but overhear their conversation. "You see the look on that guy's face," the waiter said, chuckling. "He's lucky we didn't throw him out." The bartender shook his head. "Curtis says to keep it professional, but sometimes I swear these folks just don't belong here. Not our crowd, you know." Theo's fists clenched under the table. This was it. This was the poison seeping into Riley's table, careless, offensive, and blatant. Curtis had allowed this toxicity to take root, and the staff was feeding off it. Later that evening, when the dining room began to clear, Theo called me. "You were right," Theo said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "It's bad, Ethelbert, real bad." I listened quietly, my heart sinking with every word. "What did you see?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "They're disrespecting your customers, man, especially the black ones. It's subtle at times, but you can feel it. And it's more than just the staff. They've poisoned the atmosphere. Your restaurant's reputation is crumbling." I sighed, gripping the phone tighter. And Curtis, where was he? Hiding in his office most of the night. He doesn't care, or worse, he's letting it happen. This isn't the place you built anymore. I didn't respond right away, the weight of the truth pressing down on me like 1,000 bricks. My restaurant, my legacy, was being destroyed from the inside. Curtis, my old friend, was at the center of it all. "I'm coming back," I finally said. "It's time to clean house." As the plane touched down, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. 2 years away, and now I was returning to a restaurant that had once been the heart of my dreams. I had poured my soul into Riley's table, every dish, every customer, a testament to my passion. But now, I wasn't sure what was left. I stepped off the plane and into the humid air of the city, a strange feeling settling over me. My luggage felt heavier than usual, though it wasn't the weight of my bags that pulled at me. It was the burden of what I was about to face. When I finally arrived at Riley's table, the sight nearly broke me. The once welcoming facade looked run down, the vibrant energy I remembered now replaced by a cold, indifferent vibe. I stood at the entrance, taking a deep breath before pushing through the doors. The dining room was nearly empty, save for a few tables scattered with customers. I walked in unnoticed, though I could feel the glances from the staff. They didn't recognize me, which was part of the plan. I wanted to see things for myself, without the bias of them knowing who I was. I took a seat near the window, glancing around as I waited. A waitress approached me after a long pause, her expression neutral, bordering on indifferent. "Ready to order?" she asked, her voice flat. "I'll have the special," I replied, glancing at the menu even though I knew it by heart. I had written it. But the response from the waitress, a young woman with a sneer plastered on her face, caught me off guard. "You sure you can afford that, sir?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't react. I had heard from my spy about the discriminatory treatment, but I needed to feel it for myself. Before I could reply, a man seated across from me, a black man in a sharp business suit, was being openly ignored by the same waitress, despite his attempts to get her attention. She hovered near a table of white patrons, smiling and attentive, while this man's hand remained in the air unnoticed. Anger boiled inside me, but I held my composure. "Excuse me." I called to her, my voice sharper than I intended. She approached my table, rolling her eyes. "What now?" she snapped. "Where's your manager?" I asked, my voice leveled, masking the storm brewing inside. "Oh, you don't want to talk to him," she said with a smirk. "Curtis doesn't deal with complaints from customers like you." That was the breaking point. The casual racism, the blatant disregard for the restaurant's integrity. It was all more than I could stomach. Before I could say another word, the black man at the nearby table stood up, raising his voice. "This is unacceptable." His booming voice silenced the room. The waitress turned pale, and a hush fell over the restaurant. Curtis emerged from the back, looking irritated. As he approached the commotion, I stood up, ready to reveal myself, but before I could, the black businessman spoke again. "I know the owner of this place," he announced, his voice ringing with authority, "and I guarantee he wouldn't be pleased to see what's happening here." I realized in a flash of recognition that this man was Leonard Price, a high-profile lawyer and one of my most loyal customers. He'd been dining here regularly before my absence, always leaving generous tips and bringing in big crowds. Curtis sneered at him. "Oh, you know the owner, do you? Well, he isn't here, so I don't care what you think." At that moment, I couldn't stay silent anymore. "I'm right here, Curtis," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Curtis froze, his face drained of color as he slowly turned to face me. "Ethelbert," he said, walking over, his arms open in an exaggerated gesture. "Welcome back. Didn't expect you so soon." I stood up slowly, shaking his outstretched hand. "Yeah, Curtis," I replied, my voice steady. "I wanted to see how things were going." I stepped closer, my voice dropping. "I trusted you. And now, I'm back to clean up the mess you made." The next morning, I arrived at Riley's table before dawn. The restaurant was quiet, the usual hum of early morning prep absent. It was as if the building itself held its breath, anticipating what was to come. I didn't have to wait long before Curtis showed up, looking bleary-eyed and unprepared. He froze when he saw me standing there, his usual cocky demeanor replaced with uncertainty. "Ethelbert," he began, his voice laced with false bravado. "What are you doing here so early?" I didn't respond immediately, instead turning to the row of cooks who had just started filtering in. They were mostly new faces, unfamiliar to me. They looked at Curtis for direction, but I caught their attention with a sharp, commanding voice. "Everyone gather around," I said, authority ringing in every word. "There's something you all need to hear." Curtis shifted uneasily as the staff assembled before me, curious and apprehensive. I looked at each of them, noting the unease in their eyes, the way they avoided my gaze. "I built Riley's table from the ground up," I began, my voice steady. "This restaurant was more than just a business to me. It was a dream. A place where anyone, no matter their background, could come and feel welcome, feel at home." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over the room. Curtis opened his mouth to interject, but I cut him off with a glance. But something changed while I was gone. I continued, my tone hardening. The values I upheld, the respect I demanded for my customers and my staff were lost, replaced by prejudice, disrespect, and a lack of care that I will not tolerate. Murmurs ran through the group, and Curtis stepped forward, his face pale. "Ethelbert, I think you're overreacting." "Am I?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I hired a spy, Curtis. I've seen the way customers are treated, especially the black ones. I've witnessed the decline in service, the decline in what Riley's table once stood for. And it's because you, Curtis, let it happen." The room went silent, every eye on Curtis, who looked like a cornered animal. He tried to muster up a defense, but the truth weighed too heavily on him. I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand," Curtis stammered, finally showing a glimmer of remorse. "It just happened. The staff, they weren't the right fit. I see that now." "They weren't," I agreed, my voice like steel. "And now they're gone." Curtis's eyes widened. "You can't just fire everyone." "I can. And I will," I interrupted coldly. "I'm taking back what's mine, Curtis. You're no longer in charge here." I turned to the staff, who were now exchanging nervous glances. "If you're willing to work hard, to treat every customer with the respect they deserve, you can stay. But if you're here just for a paycheck, if you think you can continue the way things have been, there's the door." A few of them shifted uncomfortably, clearly weighing their options. I could see the decision in their eyes before they even moved. 3 of them, including the surly waitress from the day before, shuffled toward the exit without a word. The rest stayed, though I could see the unease in their faces. As the door closed behind the last of them, I turned back to Curtis, who looked as though he'd just been punched in the gut. "I'm sorry, Ethelbert," he finally muttered, his shoulders slumping. "I thought I could handle it, but I lost control." "You did," I said, my voice softening slightly. "But it's done now. I'm going to fix this place, rebuild it from the ground up if I have to. But you're not part of that future, Curtis." He nodded, the fight drained out of him. "I understand," he whispered, and without another word, he turned and left. the door swinging shut behind him. The tension in the room was palpable. After Curtis left, I turned my attention to the staff that remained. A few were visibly shaken, but others seemed almost relieved, as if they had been waiting for someone to take control. But just as I was about to address them, the sound of sirens echoed outside. 2 police officers entered, their presence instantly silencing the room. "Is there a Curtis Bennett here?" one of the officers asked. The staff looked at each other in confusion, but I already knew something was off. Curtis had left in such a hurry. Could he have been running from something more than just my wrath? "What's going on?" I asked, stepping forward. The officer glanced at me, then lowered his voice. "Curtis Bennett is under investigation for embezzlement," he said. "We've been tracking suspicious financial activity linked to this restaurant." Shock rippled through the room. Embezzlement? Curtis had been stealing from Riley's table while running it into the ground. The pieces started to fall into place. The missing funds, the odd discrepancies in the accounts I'd been reviewing since my return. "I had no idea," I muttered, stunned by the revelation. The officers wasted no time heading into the back office to retrieve documents. Suddenly, everything fell into place. Curtis' mismanagement wasn't just negligence. It was part of a larger scheme to siphon money out of the business. "You?" I said, turning to Annette, Curtis's assistant. "You knew, didn't you?" Her eyes widened in fear. No, I swear I didn't." But the look on her face betrayed her. She had been Curtis' accomplice in the scam, using her position to help cover up the financial discrepancies while mistreating customers and damaging the reputation of Riley's table. "You've done enough," I said coldly, motioning to the door. "Get out. The police will deal with you next." As she slinked out of the restaurant, I turned back to the staff. "This is the reckoning," I said, my voice firm. "We're rebuilding this restaurant from the inside out. And anyone who wants to be part of that is welcome to stay. But know this, I won't tolerate anything less than excellence." The remaining staff nodded, and a new energy seemed to spark in the room. The police investigation would take time, but I had what I needed, the truth. Riley's table would rise again, but this time it would be stronger, more united, and more determined than ever before.